The rain came down in silver sheets that evening, drenching the city streets in a cold, unforgiving shimmer. A black luxury car waited at the curb, its engine humming softly, while flashes of cameras went off in the distance. The crowd had gathered outside the hotel not for a movie star, but for one of Asia's youngest and most talked about billionaires, Adrian Lee. They called him the man with the golden mind, a tech visionary who'd risen from poverty to power in less than a decade. But that night, under the flicker of streetlights and the relentless rain, someone was about to save his life, someone no one would have noticed otherwise. A maid in a wet, faded uniform stood by the marble steps, clutching a mop handle like a lifeline. Her name was Lin Xia, a quiet woman who'd come from the countryside to work at the Grand Hyatt. She had seen thousands of faces pass through the hotel, wealthy businessmen, powerful politicians, glamorous influencers, all brushing past her like she was invisible. But she wasn't invisible tonight. Because as Adrian's guards opened the car door, Lin heard something she wasn't supposed to. Two of the security men, both Chinese, were whispering by the car in a dialect from the north, a dialect Lin's late father had taught her before he died. She caught the words, "Put it on," and "explode" after 10 minutes. Her breath hitched. Her hands trembled so violently that the mop slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the wet marble. She didn't know if it was a cruel joke, or if what she heard was real. But something deep inside her told her that this wasn't just paranoia, this was a warning. Before we go on, if stories of courage, kindness, and fate touch your heart, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner, and share it with someone who believes in the power of doing what's right even when no one's watching. Your support helps us tell more stories that move the world. For a long, terrifying moment, Lin froze. The millionaire was just steps away from the car, smiling, shaking hands with journalists, his umbrella held by another guard. No one else seemed to notice the tension, the faint metallic scent in the air, or the uneasy glance that passed between the two whispering men. Lin knew she could be wrong, maybe she had misheard, but if she was right and said nothing, a man would die. A good man, she'd heard. The one who'd quietly donated millions to build schools in poor villages like hers. Her heart pounded as she dropped the mop and ran. The guards noticed her instantly, shouting for her to stop. But Lin's voice cut through the storm, trembling but fierce. "Don't get in the car," she screamed. The crowd gasped. Adrian turned sharply, confusion flickering across his face. His bodyguards moved toward her, ready to drag her away, but the panic in her eyes made him hesitate. Lin's breath came in shallow bursts. "They planted something," she cried, pointing at the car. "Underneath, please, don't." The guards cursed in Mandarin, their composure breaking for just a second too long, and that was all it took. Adrian saw it in their eyes. He shouted an order in a commanding tone, and the security team backed off, stepping toward the vehicle with trained precision. Within moments, one of them ducked beneath the car, flashlight in hand, and then everything happened at once. A shout. A rush backward. The chaotic sound of running feet. Then, silence. Underneath the gleaming black sedan, taped behind the rear axle, was a small, wired device. The timer still blinking. 10 minutes, just as Lin had heard. The police arrived within minutes. The area was cordoned off, the press dispersed, and the traitorous guards were dragged away in handcuffs. Lin stood there, drenched to the bone, her face pale and her hands trembling. She didn't know whether to cry or collapse. She had just saved a man's life, a man who could buy 1,000 lives with a single deal, and yet she felt smaller than ever. She expected to be thanked, maybe, or at least acknowledged. But instead, she was quietly escorted to a waiting room by another security officer, away from the chaos, told to wait until the boss decides what to do. Hours passed. Midnight crept by. Lin sat there, staring at the rain trickling down the window. She thought of her father again, how he used to tell her, "Courage doesn't need an audience, little one. Just truth." She smiled faintly through her exhaustion. Maybe that was enough. Maybe she didn't need anyone to know. But the next morning, when she returned to the hotel dormitory, she found the hallway buzzing. People were whispering, glancing at her. Some smiled awkwardly, others avoided her gaze. Then the manager called her into the office. Lynn's heart sank, she feared she was being fired for interrupting the event. But when she stepped inside, she froze. Adrian Lee was there, dressed simply in a gray sweater, his eyes kind but weary. He stood up when he saw her. "You saved my life," he said softly. "I don't even know your name." She bowed her head. "Lin Xia, sir." Adrian smiled. "Lin Xia," he repeated, as if memorizing it. "The world moves because of people like you. Not people like me." She didn't know what to say. Tears welled up in her eyes as he reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. She tried to refuse it, but he insisted. Inside, she found a letter, and a scholarship certificate. Full funding for her younger brother's university education. Adrian had found out that Lynn sent most of her salary home every month so her brother could stay in school. Over the next few days, the news spread like wildfire. Headlines around the world read, "Hotel Maid saves billionaire's life from bomb plot." Lynn became an overnight symbol of courage. But she didn't chase fame. She returned to her job quietly, grateful for the peace that came after the storm. Months later, she received a call from Adrian's office. He wanted to meet her again, this time, not as an employer, but as a partner in something new. He was launching a foundation to support education and safety initiatives for workers across Asia, and he wanted Lynn to lead it. "You heard danger when no one else did," he said. "Now, I want you to help others find their voices too." Years later, as Lynn stood on stage in Beijing, addressing an audience of young students whose lives her foundation had changed, she still remembered that night, the rain, the whispers, the fear. She had once been invisible. But courage had given her light. And that light now guided thousands. Sometimes, heroes don't wear suits or hold power. Sometimes, they hold a mop in trembling hands, and still find the strength to do what's right. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below with the words, "Courage is never silent." Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner for more stories that prove one brave heart can change the world.